Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. Today we are going a bit nostalgic and diving into a random bit of junk to make something hopefully that works. I was a huge fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as a kid, and I've had a couple people asking if I could make something from the Ninja Turtles, and I thought about making a turtle head and all kinds of other things. And I really wanted to kind of make a Krang, like, wearable, but I kind of ran out of time with some other things that I'm currently in the works with, and wanted to kind of piece together something relatively quick, and using some of that hoarding junk that I keep in totes in the shed. So today we are going to build a miniature version of Krang, which is the weird brain alien in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we're going to use random junk. So let's get to building. So I literally have stacks of totes with random bits crammed to the top. Generally I save stuff that is either an interesting shape, or maybe it's a sturdy material, or it could just be trash that most people would throw away. When I try to do one of these junk builds, I start with an idea of what I want to build. Then I bring in some of these totes to pull out shapes that I think I can use to make that object. My inspiration is more like the cartoonish version from the 80s of Krang, kind of keeping that shape in that version. Now the tripod, I want to kind of make my own version, because when he was scooting around on the little tripod thingy, it wasn't very detailed, so I'm going to add a bunch of random cool looking shapes. I found this doll head and legs that I thought would be a great starting point. All I have to do is change these legs into like tendrils, so let's go ahead and get started. Look away! Well, this is starting to look like something straight from a psychopath's room in a horror movie. Trust me, it will only get weirder from here. I'm gonna hot glue some foil to some areas to help bulk up, like the backside, the top ridge, and his bottom jaw. Once it's glued on, I use some scissors to help get it into the final shape. Currently there are 3 different materials on my build. If I left it this way and then spray painted it, you would see the transition between the materials because the surfaces would absorb the paint differently. To unify them, Krang gets a full coating of hot glue. This will also be the gyri, or the folds of the brain. With my can of air turned upside down, I can freeze the surface of the hot glue quickly and have a little more control on the shape. These fangs are intended to shove into a carved pumpkin for Halloween, but I'm going to use them for Krang's teeth. From what I remember and the images that I found, unless he's talking, the only teeth you see are his lower ones protruding from his underbite. So I heat up a small metal file and burn a hole to shove the plastic teeth into. The plastic snakes I use to add little tendrils that come off of him. He has some like under his chin and coming off of his arm areas, and then there's some off the back of his head. So I just do the same basic thing, drill out a hole with this hot metal piece and then stick them in there and glue over them. The little tripod Krang would sit on when he wasn't in the large android was a small wheel around with kind of little details. It looked like a cheap camera tripod or something. So I decided to make mine a little more detailed and custom with some interesting shapes. I'm not going to show the whole process because that would make this video significantly longer. Just understand that there's a lot of me pulling out pieces, trying to hold them up to each other and figure out where things can go. I would say I do this for like an hour or so to try and figure out the parts I need. Just know that when I start, I'm using a wall mount intended to hold a basketball like on your garage wall, and then I built from there. To make a good connection, I screw on some resin casts that I pulled from an Evil Ted Cos mold and backfilled the gaps with some hot glue. I kept the wheel to some cheap IKEA storage cabinets and decided to use these as kind of like wheels to help Krang move around on his tripod. I drilled some holes into the bottom and hot glued them in. The rest of the base was made from plastic pieces they packaged furniture with to protect the corners, random container lids to make his platform, and then like EVA dowels to thicken out the legs with an ashtray to support the connection between the tripod thingy and the platform, and then a whole mess of hot glue. For my custom tripod, I thought I would give Krang some arms to like help protect him, so I drilled out some holes in the ashtray to glue these flexible coolant pipes meant for machine work. I also made a little control panel on the top of some random plastic bits, 2 glue sticks, and the ends of a jump rope handle. I decided instead of hands or pinchers for my arms, I was going to make some saw blades out of acrylic. I put in a sheet on my Glowforge, pull a saw blade SVG from the program library, and quickly cut out these nice little 2.5-inch blades. These would have taken me probably an hour or two to cut out by hand, and definitely would not be anywhere near perfect. With my laser cut, it did it perfectly in under 3 minutes. I unified the surfaces with a base coat of black spray paint primer. Then, to get them closer to the final color, I lightly misted the tripod with silver and Krang with some pink. The cartoon version of Krang is more of a single homogeneous shade of pink. I want my details to stand out a little more, so I'm going to go for a little bit more realistic paint job. Not like super realism, because I don't know that I can pull that off, but I'm going to make it detailed. I push purple into the crevices and then paint on some veins and arteries with red and blue Platifex acrylic paint. I overdo the colors because they will get muted in the next layer. Once done, I hit it with a quick clear coat before adding my washes. While Krang is outside drying, I switch over to the tripod. This is just going to be a rusted hunk of metal, so I start with a wet application of some brown and black, push it into all the cracks, and then pull off some of it with a paper towel. To spice it up a little and add some rust, I'm going to use the spice approach. You've probably seen me use this before, but if not, here we go. I'm using curry powder, cinnamon, chili, basically any spice that's colored like rust, I pull out of the cabinet. And on top of all of that, it makes this thing smell awesome. It smells like nice curry instead of some chemical treatments. I add drips and dry brushes of silver rub and buff to add edges to some of it to sell it as some dirty, rusted up old metal.
To knock back the pink a little and make it a little more realistic, having the veins and arteries look like they're underneath the surface of the brain tissue, I sponge on a loose mix of pink, orange, and off-white with a little bit of water. After that had dried, I went over it with a light brown wash to dirty him up just a little bit, hand painted his little fangs, and gave him some jaundiced looking eyes. I thought it stood out a little more than the purple ones that he had in the cartoon, so I know it's not canon, neither is this entire build. After that, I hot glued him to the tripod and called it done.
And we are finished. Here's the end result. I think it turned out super awesome. I was kind of doubting it at first, especially when this was not painted. It looked super creepy being able to see that baby doll's head underneath all that glue. But once I got the paint on there, it's tied it all together and kind of gave me that confidence to finish. I've seen a lot of images of Krang, and I vaguely remember him when he wasn't in that giant robot sitting on a small little tripod deal. So that's kind of the basis for this, but then I added my own little flares all over it, using this little bendable tubing stuff to help me to make some random weapon that he could also use on it, which I thought was a cool idea. So yeah, and using these, I think these came off of like some cheap cabinet or something that we bought a while back, and it just kind of works. So maybe you will try and make one of these yourselves and impress your friends with your ability to back into the past and pull out something from your childhood and make it new and cool, and hopefully sit on a shelf and creep people out as they come into your man cave. For sure. Maybe you'll get some.
Yay!
And inevitably, they're going to ask you, how'd you make that? You can give them one of these. Tell them, much props. I guess I'll go ahead and let him give you a little smoochy smooch. Pucker up. Come on. You know you want to. Give old Krangy a kissy poo. Ah!
If you enjoy what I do here on YouTube and want to see me turn more random junk into nostalgia, please consider joining these awesome people listed here with me over on Patreon to build a bigger, better, more creative community together.